I'm here with Madam Eva Odwor, who is the Managing Director of Kenya Bureau of Standards, and my colleague Michelle, who is the Technical Director in charge of matters on regulation, on trade facilitation issues. Now, we've had a visitor for the last 1.5 days in the name of Pascal Lamy, who is the outgoing Director General. He was visiting Kenya, and in particular Trademark East Africa, just to acquaint himself with the work that Trademark is doing. As you know, WTO is the nerve center of trade, and the mission for Trademark East Africa is growing prosperity through trade. Our main focus is on increasing trade within East Africa, and we have an objective in our program that by 2016 we will have contributed to at least a 10% increase in the value of exports from the East African region to the international market. We also hope that we shall have increased the intra-regional trade by 25%, and also that we shall reduce the time it takes to import or export a good through Mombasa or Dar es Salaam to any of the East African countries by at least 15%. And finally, we expect that through the work we are doing, we shall reduce the time it takes trucks to cross our borders by at least 30%. So increasing trade in our program has three components. We want to we promote market access. We do projects that help us promote market access on one hand. On the other, we also want to do things that improve the trade environment. And finally, we also put our resources in areas that improve the competitiveness of products. And so the way we are structured is that we are in 6 countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, and South Sudan. And we have regional programs and also national programs. So for me, I am the Kenya Country Director. I'm the director in charge of the Kenya Country Program. And we have several projects that we are doing in Kenya related to increasing, reducing the transaction cost, or what you call the transit time. Or it has to do with looking at infrastructure projects, like the Port of Mombasa. We have a $53 million project with the Port of Mombasa. We are helping Kenya Ports Authority to do 2 things. One is to upgrade the infrastructure. We are looking at the berths 1 to 18, trying to help improve the yards and a bit of reorganization within the KPA premises, and also to widen the roads, especially the gates, because the problem is sometimes exit becomes a problem even when you want to evacuate the goods. So we have a program to help Kenya Ports Authority to upgrade its infrastructure, berths 1 to 18. And what we are doing now is just at the design stage, although some tenders are about to be rolled out also in some of the work that really don't require design. We are also helping Kenya Ports Authority to improve productivity. We have a productivity improvement plan with them, just to help them train their staff and in several areas that help them to be more productive. And finally, we also have some support for them to develop a new law that governs the authority. So we are going to have a revision of the current act of the Kenya Ports Authority, which was legislated in early 1970s. We also have projects with ministries. We are supporting the Ministry of EAC, the Ministry of East African Community, particularly in their policy unit. There's a new unit we have helped to develop. We are training their staff. We have provided some consultants just to help them, develop, to domesticate the common market protocol. And we are helping also in the area of awareness creation. because most Kenyans are still not very well versed with issues of regional integration. So we have a program with them to help them pass out or roll out information on what is really going on regional integration front. We have some projects also with the Ministry of Trade. We're helping the Ministry of Trade to come up with a policy, trade policy, and also in aspects of trade facilitation. And we are also in discussions with Kenya Revenue Authority to see if we can help in facilitating a change of the Simba system, because it has a number of challenges. Discussions are at an advanced stage, and probably we'll let you know when we conclude those discussions on what exactly we shall be doing with them. I will probably stop there because there are quite a number of projects that we do, so that my colleagues can say, and maybe the best thing is for you to ask questions and then we can answer. So maybe I give my colleague Michelle just to tell you what we are doing, and then Madam Eva.
Right. Just as a complement to what my colleague already mentioned, I'm responsible for a regional program on trade facilitation. We work very closely with the national programs because we want to make sure that what we are proposing at the regional level is actually consistent with what's been proposed at the national level as well. So we have a very active program specifically targeting non-tariff barriers, and among that, including the issues regarding standards also. So for a snapshot of what we're doing, so we have several projects, as my colleague mentioned also, but particularly on a new law on non-tariff barriers, which actually makes the framework, the existing framework, into a more credible work. So it includes the possibility of sanctions for countries that do not eliminate or which create new NTBs, and this is not our requirement. This is actually under the EAC treaty and under the protocol, the Common Customs Union Protocol. So as part of these efforts, we're working very closely with the national governments and with the EAC Secretariat also, in terms of providing the necessary support for this for the enactment and implementation of this law. We are also working on standards issues, particularly at the regional level, particularly on issues of regional harmonization of standards. There's no reason why a company in Kenya that wants to sell its products in Tanzania or vice versa, or in Burundi, Rwanda, and so forth, why they should need to comply with different sets of standards, regulations within East Africa. So we're trying to facilitate trade as far as that goes. Last year, we were able to support harmonization of 69 standards, 28 of which we expect will be adopted when the next meeting of the Council of Ministers takes place at the EAC level. I guess in a snapshot, this is what I have, and also in terms of standards work, a lot of the contributions by trademark on equipment, for example, such as what KEBS has recently received, is actually being provided by our national programs, but again in close coordination. We want to make sure that what's being provided in a country is also consistent with the others, and also that it is very demand driven. We need to provide equipment as to if it's for the fisheries industry, or if it's for different types of analysis, that it is consistent with what the local market demands. Yeah.
So maybe before she just talks about what we have supported, just want to say that on 7th May, we had a ceremony, a handing over ceremony of equipment. We bought an equipment worth $780,000, which is meant to help Kenya Bureau of Standards to improve its scope of testing and also the accuracy of testing, particularly of food items. And I think Madam will tell you exactly what that does, the implications of that to the work that they are doing. And we are also supporting Kenya Bureau of Standards to come up with a new quality policy and also a revision of the Standards Act. Madam, maybe you can explain more.
Well, we're talking about increasing trade within the region by 25%, and we are talking about increasing trade from the region outside by 10%. And this means that as a region, we have to be working on the same platform, we have to be doing the same standard. And as Marshall said, one of the things that we are actively involved in is harmonization of standards. And one of the things that TMEA has really helped us as a country and also as a region is to facilitate for the meetings of harmonization to happen and to make sure that experts are on the platform. So some of the things which a while back would take like 3 years because countries are still consulting and harmonization is taking place, we find that because of that support and because people are able to attend meetings, that we are able to do harmonization in 6 months or less. And that's why we are able to say that in the last year or so we have done 69, we have harmonized 69 standards. And that is really key in terms of ensuring that we can increase trade amongst ourselves. Then apart from that, what is it that stops our products from going out of the country? So sometimes it's not what we are looking at, it's what we can't see. And usually it is the toxic materials that, like you're talking about pesticide residues, you're talking about mercury in fish. And the levels that are required are very, very low, very, very low. And with the equipment that Trademark East Africa has donated to us or has bought for us or helped us to buy, it's an equipment costing 63 million Kenya shillings, and it is able to do almost all organometallic compounds in a very short time. It's something that we can, if all was equal, power is on the whole night, nothing, no interruption, we can set up everything in the night and come in the morning and we have results. What does that mean? That we can do maybe 100 water samples in the night and by morning we have results for everybody. It is the only kind of equipment within the region, which means that with this equipment, the region can send their samples to Kenya Bureau of Standards and we'll be able to test them. And by the following day, with technology, we can email them back results. What does that mean? We are reducing the turnaround time, we are reducing the cost, and we are making trade be able to happen much faster. And this is just some of the things that we are doing with Trademark. And we are just about to discuss things to do with what we call technical regulations. They are normally put together under NTBs, where NTBs are non-tariff barriers. But from the standards point of view, we talk mainly about technical barriers to trade, which are also non-tariff barriers. And sometimes we have harmonized standards, but within our own different countries, we come up with different regulations, different technical regulations. So you find that there is still a problem in the border. And these are some of the things that we are doing with the support of the Trademark East Africa to ensure that even our technical regulations are harmonized, or that we make reference to standards so that we do not have different rules. And that is what will finally facilitate this 25% increase of trade within the region, because we will reduce all the things that stop people. And once you have a standard, you know how to do it. And then, because we have test facilities, we can tell you whether you have done the right thing. And the standard is for everyone. It's at a small fee, but it's for everyone. And with the standard, you can get the right thing. And if we are all using the same standard in the region, then we don't have to have multiple tests, multiple everything. It comes to a point where it is real integration. And very soon we'll also be not having any borders among us. Maybe the only borders will be, I think Kenya's border will only be Mombasa. And yeah, because the rest will all be free market, and the next one will be where Rwanda borders with whoever is not in East Africa. And that's what we are hoping for, because then it means that you can send your goods anywhere using standards and ensuring that you meet the requirements of the standards. And that is why it is important for us that Trademark East Africa has supported us in harmonization of standards and also provided us with the much needed, very expensive equipment that has reduced our turnaround time. Maybe I can say from 10 days to 2 days. That's a real great thing. And even the scope from about 20 to 100, even more, all types of compounds that you can be able to test.
So maybe, because Frank is here, he can also answer some of the questions. But let's give you the chance to ask questions. Yes.
I don't know where Kenya is rated in terms of corruption. I don't know whether Tanzania did overtake us, because it is said corruption within the region is a great barrier to East African trade. So I don't know really where we are when it comes to terms to corruption. And the form of corruption.
Well, first of all, thanks, Eva. I thought you were very eloquent as usual on standards. Actually, at Trademark East Africa, I mean, I think corruption does have a problem. Does cause problems with trade. And in fact, what I'd like to do is refer you to a study that we did with Transparency International, which looked at the problem of corruption across borders on the Northern Corridor. And we'll be very happy to share that with you. What it showed was that corruption and the costs associated with delays and roadblocks really does matter to trade. And I think it probably, if I remember correctly from the report, sorry? Yeah, I think it's a bit higher, around about 5% extra costs. So, and a lot of that sort of corruption, I guess, is roadblocks and unofficial payments through borders, etc. But I'd like to refer you to that report, and if you would like us to do an interview in depth on that, I'd be happy to do that with Transparency International.
Probably still tied to a point where they cannot really address it fully. Probably ask KEBS on this particular issue. What's being done at this point, and how big is the whole?
From KEBS perspective, when you're talking about goods being smuggled, we look at goods from goods that meet the requirements of the Kenya standard, yeah, and from the different borders, official borders that we know, they are always manned by both KEBS and Kenya Revenue Authority, and when we have some intelligent information telling us that there is something coming, we can rope in the anti-counterfeit agency and ask them to come in and see. But having said that, we have some porous borders which are not official borders, and nobody mans them. And that is a route where you can have smuggled goods. Then the other one, which I believe when the whole integration system works, will be gotten rid of, is like you can have goods on transit. Yeah, we perhaps, especially if it's not a harmonized standard, do not meet the Kenyan standard. And maybe they are on transit not to an East African country. They can be on transit to Congo or wherever. But the goods are never actually on transit. When they drive into Kenya, then the whole corruption, I don't know what to call it, comes. The goods now land into Kenya, but we did not inspect them because they were not for Kenya. They were transit goods. So I think KRA is handling that. Customs is handling that by having trackers to ensure that goods which are supposed to be on transit go on transit. But from the East African perspective, we are trying to lobby to come to a point where we can do, if necessary, joint verification at Mombasa, so that we ensure that even if the goods were dropped off in Kenya, they still meet the requirements.
I think it's important to recognise what Eva said there, is that the community, East African community, is moving towards a first point of entry system.
Yeah.
What that means is that all the goods for the whole community, when the borders disappear,
will be analysed at the point of entry, usually the ports. So Mombasa will be a really important, it already is, but it'll become an even more important gateway to the region for a consumer base in the community around 140 million, the wider countries around 220 million. So it will be really important. The other thing I'd just like to say on that is something that we've been doing with the government of Uganda and the government of Rwanda is supporting the development of a cargo tracking system. And cargo tracking systems electronically tag containers and then actually monitor their progress along a corridor, a road. So that will reduce, I think, the potential for smuggling quite considerably.
You mentioned still something to reduce cost within the region.
It's a good question. What we're aiming to do with our partners is just not trademark, I mean, we provide the support, but our partners, like ever, are the ones that make the big difference. We add technical expertise and money. But so what we're aiming to do is to increase trade by 10%. We aim to support that 10% increase in trade, and we aim to achieve that by reducing trade costs and trade time by 15%. And when you take an economic cost-benefit analysis, you try to value those benefits, they're worth $17 billion in terms of savings to the private sector. That means $17 billion that can create more jobs. That means $17 billion that can create more trade. That means $17 billion that helps East Africans. And for every dollar invested in our program, we think we have around about a $34 return. And that's a pretty good investment on the whole. Does that clarify it for you?
I understand that Trademark made a substantial investment in terms of support.
If you look at trade volumes over the next 20 years, we've been modelling that, and we reckon trade volumes will go up 4 times through Mombasa. And at the current capacity of the port, that will become quite a problem. Obviously, development of Lamu might help exacerbate that, but that'll take a while. So we're very focused with our partners in Mombasa, particularly the Kenya Ports Authority, to try to increase the capacity and the efficiency. And when you look at a port, it's usually the ship-shore interface, then the port itself, and then what we call the offtake. When it goes out of the port gates, how does it get onto the road? And you know that there are issues with Mariakani Weybridge down the line. So as you know, as the DG, the Director General of the WTO said, it's not just about the port; it's about the corridor. You've got to think about the whole system. But anyway, to answer your question in full, we're working very closely with all the partners on Mombasa Port, and we're really excited that we called a roundtable recently, and I think everyone's very keen to have a presidential level roundtable on Mombasa, which I hope will take place probably in July. And that'll be looking really at the reform agenda across many institutions.
That is a 20-feet container, the capacity. There is also work at the Path 19, which is being done at the moment, and that is also going to create greater capacity. So as I said earlier, the work we are doing within the port is more to upgrade existing infrastructure and just to improve the yards and just to make sure that, as Frank said, ship-to-shore interface is improved. And we hope that in the next roundtable that we plan to have maybe before July or early July, we shall be able to address some of the constraints that this program that Trademark has with KPA may not necessarily address. There are external constraints, there are too many parties involved, too many players, and we need to make sure that there is better regulation, better coordination. And that can only be done by government. So we hope that during that ceremony there will be a charter that will be signed by all the parties, committing themselves to do an action plan, committing themselves to do things within an action plan, such that by the end of the time, we shall then be able to unlock the potential. We see a time frame up to around 2016 for us, at least in this program that we have in KPA.
But there is also the single window program. And the single window is the one now where, like, all the other agencies, the other players, when we clear goods, then from the single window, it will be very clear who is holding goods and why, And that will reduce also on the corruption aspect, because we are now, everybody's looking at what is on the window. If it is KEBS that has not cleared, why has KEBS not cleared it, and what is the reason? And so, the whole issue of delaying, because, delaying is also another cost. So the whole issue of delaying will go away, and that will make sure that goods also leave the port faster, rather than, demurrage and storage, yeah.
I'd like to ask you about counterfeits. So counterfeits, how much are they costing, private sector players in Kenya? And what is KEBS doing? Because part of the problem is your mark of quality is counterfeitable. I can say that. Well, those are the problems with the products, the cigarettes, the medicine.
I can't talk very much about counterfeit now, because we have an anti-counterfeit agency that deals with counterfeit products. But they work very closely with KEBS, because we get in touch with a lot of products and we are able to sound them in case we have some issue that there could be a counterfeit. But when you talk about the what is being counterfeited in the country, the anti-counterfeit agency is better placed. But everything is counterfeitable, actually, including the KEBS mark. And as somebody once told me, as long as there's a market for a counterfeited good, they will always be there. But having said that, what we are going an extra mile to ensure that our mark is not going to be counterfeited. How do we do that? At present, we are in a system where we are launching in a system where, through an SMS from the supermarket, you can be able to tell whether that thing, it's not yet ready, but it's almost 90% done. You can be able to tell whether the product that has the mark is in our data or not. And if it is not, then you automatically know that this is a counterfeited product. Yeah, because you can't tell just by looking. So we have come up with some IT system that connects to our data, that puts everything. All the S marks will have a specific number, and we will the SMS number is given. First, we had done it on products, but we realized that with products, somebody can, if the product is called Eva, like me, you can have 10 products called Eva. And when you do this, it tells you Eva is in the data. But Eva can have 10 numbers. So it will tell you whether the number is the one which we have in our database, and you can immediately be able to know. It's quite a process. We thought we would be able to finish it by June, but we realized that it's a very, very complicated process. But at the end of the day, we should be able to take care of. We're saying that the marks, this is a true mark, this is not a true mark. But we also have a surveillance team, which then would go out and be able to affirm whether the mark is a KEBS mark or not. Yeah. So those are some of the processes we are putting in place for that. Yeah.
I mean, let me make a general point, and then I'm going to pass over to Chris and Eva to answer the detail. Because we've got around 200 projects that we operate here at Trademark. So basically, our partnership with KEBS is for the long run. I mean, we certainly see ourselves working to promote trade till 2016 minimum, but we probably see ourselves working till 2020 thereafter. So, we're looking for long-term partnerships, and we've gone through the first stage, I think, of the partnership, and we'll be looking to extend that. But maybe I'll ask Chris to talk in more detail.
Yes, our program with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, at least for this period, is from 2012 to 2016. We have a budget of $1.8 million. So far, we have used about $1.2 million to buy the equipment, which cost about $780,000, and the remaining balance of between 1.2 and 780 to go to production of the policy and the revision of the act. The remaining amount will be used mainly for sensitization by Kenya Bureau of Standards, particularly in reaching out to the SMEs, small and medium enterprises, to make them come to Kenya Bureau of Standards to make use of the new equipment that we have, because most of them are not aware. So but as Frank says, our partnership is going to be much longer than 2016. So we hope to still work along with KEBS in the area of improving standards.
Not what they want, and that's a very big difference when it comes to aid. And so KEBS has already put the next request and proposal in place, and Trademark East Africa has it, and we are confident that it will be considered positively, because already we have done very well in the first program here.
I think one of the exciting things of the program is the fact that KEBS has been really working across the region to improve the capacity in this area. So, for example, Eva's team have done a lot of work with training folks from South Sudan, from Burundi, I think from Rwanda. So, you know, this is a really important investment by Kenya in their fellow neighbors. Did you have a question?
October. Yes, I think it's October. Yes. Okay, the thing about counterfeiting, you have to work very closely with the owner of the product. So if your product is in the market and it is selling, but you're not getting anything in your pocket, then you know that there is something wrong. Because, you know, when it is packaged and everything, it's so difficult to, I mean, sometimes we bring the owner of the product and he says they can't tell the difference. You know, it's that bad. So it's like we have to really work together with the owner of the product so that we can be able to know that there's a leakage here. That has happened when somebody says we think there's a problem here, and then we follow it up and we actually find out, and usually we are able at the end of the day to find out that there are some packages being done somewhere in some corner and coming into the market. So that one you have to follow up to where you get, you know, that problem. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult. Except that now when you test the content, when the owner is suspicious about it, then you test the content and then they say, these are not my contents. Then you know immediately this is counterfeit. Yes.
So does KEBS have any sort of statistics, numbers on various industries, how much is being done domestically?
No, KEBS doesn't have, but I know Anti-Counterfeit Agency is working on that. Yes, yeah. And it is true that that you have products counterfeited within the country. It's not just the products that are coming in. But it's also true that sometimes people confuse the difference between a substandard product and a counterfeited product. Yeah. And counterfeited products sometimes are just as good as the non-counterfeited because you're working on somebody's, you know, logo, trademark, and you're doing nothing about it. You're just selling, you know, yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll take one. That's actually, I think, a very, very good question because there's been a lot of progress, I think, on that recently.
Yes, yeah.
As my understanding is, there's now agreement on a mutual standard for edible oils. It's a really important one. I think Martial and Eva will want to talk more. But if I remember correctly, the trade in edible oils across the region is worth about 10 billion.
That's right.
So, you know, a mutual standard is really important.
Yes.
So, you know, and that's one example that we're doing in the portfolio across the region of how we can really unlock trade through standards. It's really important work. But let me pass over to Martial and Eva to answer that in detail because there's quite a lot of news on this. And if you're actually interested further while they're changing over, we actually have a case study on that particular issue if you would like it. Just ask Nelson at the end. We have a whole lot of case studies on different pieces of work that we're doing, and there is one particularly on edible oils.
That's absolutely correct. As Frank mentioned, we did, as one of the outcomes of these 69 standards that we alluded to in the beginning, edible oils is also included in there because what we're trying to do is target the list of most traded goods in East Africa, and of course, edible oils figures very prominently there. So they have been harmonized. Now they need to be adopted because you have a system of harmonization, then you have a system of editing the standards, and then you have a system for adoption of the standards. So the adoption will take place by the EAC Council of Ministers when they meet. They meet next July or August. Yeah. So and as Frank mentioned, we do have quite substantial information on that for you.
So we can give that to you. Eva, do you want to add anything to that?
the Chinese dumping.
No,
come to that in a
I don't
second.
like to talk people's names. When it comes to is that we are trying to harmonize our inspection systems for all the countries. Because you see, when you open the borders, if let's say Tanzania is not doing the same thing, it means that the product can come into Tanzania and then come into Kenya. When we started the pre-shipment verification of conformity PIVOC program of inspecting imported goods, there was a really, we really had a lot of non-compliances were many. But as I speak to you now, we are finding that we have come to a point where we are on 90% compliance, as opposed to where we came from of 40-something% compliance. And what has happened is that the other countries have actually realized that there has been gain in that inspection. And not only within the region, but even within the wider Africa. Botswana, Swaziland, they have all come to KEBS to find out how do you do this so that we can also be able to cap this. If we can do it as a region, do the same process, and that's what it's not just harmonization of standards, even harmonization of procedures, then it means that we are doing it the same way. So we are blocking the same things, and that's what we are striving for. I think Uganda has embraced the program. Tanzania has embraced the program, and I think Rwanda is about to do the same. Now that will help us, and then we are dealing with, we always say that we have 80% people who will do the right thing, but you have 20% rogue who will mess up the system. So now we'll deal with this 20% rogue. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're going to stop there.